Hey everyone, back out in the garage again today. This time the green machine is out here in the center, and just next to it is the wire harness. Last time I ran out of time to get the wire harness installed, and I was also out of sleeving to put on this heavy gauge wire. I'm gonna try to put both of them in the car today. Wish me luck. Woohoo!
Garage time.
When I put the wire harness and the battery cable in the 911, I did it first the wire harness and then the battery cable, and I had a really hard time getting the battery cable to slide next to the main wire harness. So this time, I think I'm gonna try something a little different. I'm gonna prepare both harnesses to go together at the same time. I'll use 2 pull cords, and I think it's gonna be less overall friction if I sort of tug on each of the cords together and pull them in as one unit, because they're ultimately gonna go side by side. I'll try that and see how it works. But before I put this big battery cable in, I gotta put its extra protective sheathing on it. Okay, here's that original harness, and it's pretty torn up. I think there's some bare copper showing right here, which is not good. I mentioned last time, but this wire is heavier gauge than the stock wire. This is O gauge, and this sleeving is a pretty tight fit over it. I mean, it does slide, but it's gonna get really difficult after I get some distance on it. So I also got some of this stuff. This is for like pulling wire through electrical conduit. It's called Wire Aid, and it's a lubricant. I thought I would use that as opposed to the silicone oil. I think this stuff will just dissipate on its own. It says it's for use in plastic, PVC. Not sure how much of that stuff you need to use, but figure can't hurt. And it's all over the place. Yeah, this is hard to hold on to. Forget what you ask for. I'm about 3/4 of the way done, but I think I'm gonna have to start over. I think it's just getting too hard to push it. It's probably much better to pull it. Yeah, I think what I'm gonna try is to strip this insulation back a little bit and put the terminal on now and use that to pull it through the sleeving. That goes right there. I'm just gonna crimp that down. Okay, this crimper is designed to be hammered, and it does work like that. Although when I did the 911, I made this frame, and this allows me to use a hydraulic jack. Basically turns it into a hydraulic crimper. And the feel of this is just, to me, it feels better to use the hydraulic way. You sort of get a feeling for how much pressure you're putting on it. Whereas with the hammer, it's complete guesswork. I'm just gonna shift this thing to the floor so I can push on it a little bit more. It looks really dangerous, but I know that there's not a lot of energy built into it. So I'll put my safety glasses on, but should be fine. Yeah, I think that's got it. It's got, you know, nice marks on the back here, kind of that triangle pattern. And then on this side, there's a big depression. So that really puts all those copper, kind of like bulks it up into one solid piece. This will not come off. Yep, that's not going anywhere. Now on this junction, I would love to put some heat shrink on there and just keep it hermetically sealed. But because I'm pulling the sleeving over this, I don't want any extra bulk right now. So I'll pull the sleeve through, probably pull it through the car, and then I'll shrink it last. So much easier to pull than push. So I don't know if you can tell, but this sleeving, I mean, it's really tight on here. I cannot really pinch it. It's, you can feel a little bit of air in there, but it's pretty tight. As luck would have it, I already have this wire in the location where the wire harness goes. So I can pull my strings through, The battery cable comes out that hole right there, and then the wire harness comes out that hole right there. Okay, I'm just getting things comfortable here to work inside. I'm gonna be laying down and pulling cables through. That's the rope I'm gonna pull through first, and then you can barely see the coat hanger coming out of that oval hole right there next to the pedals. This is probably the thickest part of the harness, and I just don't think there's any way to be able to pull this part through the part of the tunnel. So I'm gonna have to pull it from the other direction. See, this part here has got the extra rubber piece. It's just a lot thicker here. All that mass with these heavy cables for the starter, I just feel like it's easier to pull it from inside of the car than to pull it from underneath the car. I'm just gonna temporarily tape these down so it'll slip through without catching. Okay, here's my setup. I actually have 2 ropes just tied to the brake pedal right now. That's what I'm gonna pull from. I'm gonna pull towards the front of the car using those 2 ropes. And then down here under the car, I have my harnesses kind of laid out here in the engine bay area. Here's the bottom of the car. There's 2 ropes, one coming out the harness hole, the other one coming out the battery hole. So this one is tied up to the battery cable, and this one is tied up to the wire harness. And then here's some of that lube just ready. Okay, and before I pull the harnesses through, I'm gonna use this. This is my boroscope. It's got a little camera here on the end. So I'm gonna shove this down inside the tunnel and find out if there's any sharp surfaces, any kind of weld, slag, or wire whiskers poking through, any sort of carpet tacks, anything like that that'll prevent the harness from going through or damage it. Do this with one person if possible. So you can see that's the battery cable just getting stuck right there. Just putting a little bit of this lube right on the thickest part, right when it goes in. Maybe take the battery cable out and just get past that little lump right there. All right, a quick progress report. I have the main harness, at least the small wires are poking through the front of the tunnel. I mean, that's good news. The bad news is the big cable this guy here, the jacketing or the PVC sleeving is bunched up. I don't know if you can tell, but there's like it's snagging right here on the PVC. So there's a big wad of PVC right there. So I need to trim that bulge off. And I think what I'm gonna try to do before I pull the main harness all the way through, I think I'm gonna try to fish this through the other direction. You know, this is the side that goes to the starter. So I was really pulling it in the wrong way. I was just trying to get it through, and then potentially I could re-crimp another end on it if I needed to. Despite that battery cable being a little bigger than stock, I did get it in relatively easy. I had a much easier go on this car than I did the 911. I guess just practice makes perfect. Inside here, both cables are coming through. The battery cable is coming along the passenger footwell, kind of goes up, 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 and then hides away right into the corner, goes into the battery box. And then the main harness just takes a left right here. I am missing a rubber grommet that goes right there, so I'm gonna have to order that before I get it all locked in place. But this wire harness just continues up, ultimately comes out near the ignition switch, so it's just dangling here. I just cleaned up this rubber boot. I thought it was for the battery cable as it exits the tunnel. I'll show you underneath there in a minute, but this is the original part, and when I cleaned it up, there's some part numbers on it. I was just using silicone oil like usual, but this has an ATE part number. So now I'm wondering if maybe I have this confused with the brake master cylinder, because it looks like this might be the master cylinder boot. If any of you know which is which on that, let me know. It might work for both, I'm not sure. But I'll go into the car and see how it fits on the cable. Maybe it's used in two places. Here's how those wires look coming out of the tunnel. This is that boot I cleaned up, and then this is the bicycle inner tube. And it actually gets stretched over this boss here on the tunnel. It keeps slipping off, so I need to use a clamp or something to really keep it on there. It's a little cumbersome to put on there, but that does keep a weather-tight seal on the harness, prevents things from going in the tunnel. Then the routing is, you know, kind of loosely going up here, up into the engine bay, and then right all the way out to the taillights eventually. I think the trick was to pull the main harness into its really most natural position. So there's a small channel within the tunnel, and you can't have any branches inside there. So when you try to pull them together, you might have harnesses that are too thick, and you just can't get the two cables to pass through. But if you pull the main harness in far enough so that it's at the thinnest spot within inside the tunnel, then you can pass the battery cable through, kind of going the other way. And I had them both lubed up. I don't think I could have done it without that lube, actually. It's super tight. So I was able to shift them together and just, you know, massage them until they got right in there. I don't think you can fit a bigger cable in there. It's really, really a tight fit. I think that's useful, so they just don't want the cables, you know, chafing or rubbing around. So I think it's designed to be a tight fit, but it also makes it hard for people like you and I. That's it for today. Thank you again for watching. Hopefully we'll do some 911 content here shortly.